Before we start with the next step, we would start with a few exercises. The first exercise is what would happen if we combine a matcher with a hard-coded value. In this particular method, I'm using list sublist, and I would want to pass in one of the parameters as any integer. So if the first parameter is any integer and the second parameter is 5, I'm saying then throw this exception. Most important thing is what would happen in this particular case. So you can try it out and see what would happen, and you will find out that Mockito does not allow a combination of matches and a hard-coded value. So you should either be generic always, or you should be very specific in each case. So you can try that out and find a little bit more about it. The next thing you can try is to mock a few other list methods. Try and play around with it so that you will be able to understand it much more. And the other thing is to find out what would happen if an unstubbed method is called. We have played around with this already. We understood the concept of nice mock because by default we know now that for all methods that return a value, a mock will either return null, a primitive value, or an empty collection. We saw that it returned an empty list when we did not stub it. So similarly, it would return an empty collection of that particular type when we do not stub it. So one of the examples is it returns a 0 for an integer. For any boolean value, by default it would return a false back. So those are the things that would happen when an unstubbed method is called. So you can try all these three exercises before you move into this specific step. We are now in step 6, and in this step we are going to be introduced to something called BDD, behavior driven development. So what is behavior driven development? Let's try and understand that with an example. So you know that most of the agile projects use user stories. At the user story level, you'd say, as a store owner, I want to add items back to stock when they are returned. So when items are returned back, I would want to actually add them to the available items in the stock. So that's the user story. But if I'm properly doing behavior driven development, what I would do is I would kind of create scenarios around this specific user story. So the first scenario which we are creating is that when there are, let's say, 3 black sweaters in stock and a customer returns the black sweater, then I should have 4 black sweaters in stock. So you write the scenarios in a given, when, then format. So you'd say, given that somebody has bought a sweater from me and I have 3 sweaters in stock, when he returns the sweater back, then I should have 4 black sweaters in stock. Similarly, other scenarios. So given something and something and something, when an action happens, then this should be the result. In a behavior-driven development scenario, what we would start doing is splitting the story, the user story, into multiple scenarios of given, when, then conditions. And once I've split the story into given, when, then conditions, then I would start writing tests for each of these scenarios. So what we would do is we would start writing tests in the same format as the scenarios. So you'd start writing tests in a given, when, then kind of a format. So you'd start saying given something, when something happens, then do this. This is the kind of test that we would start writing. So this perfectly matches how unit testing is typically done, because at the start of a unit test you do something called a setup. So the setup is usually to set up all the scenarios, set up the base situation for a specific scenario. That's the given. And when is the actual method call. So the actual method call which we want to test, the system under test method call. So when the specific action happens, then we check all the asserts. So then we would assert that something has happened. So this given, when, then is a good way of writing your test. And what Mockito did is also come up with a specific class. It's called BDD Mockito, where there are specific methods which would help you to write tests in that way. So instead of using when and then return, you can say given this, then do this. something of that kind. So even the syntax of Mockito uh, allows us to write given, when, then kind of a situation. Let's use the BDD methods that Mockito provides. Let's go to the to do business IMPL Mockito test, and we know that there is a test case in here where we were using a mock. So I would actually now copy this test case. I'll remove the empty list one which we created to understand mocks in more. I'll say using BDD now. I've copied this specific test. The test is not the, I mean, test is a very simple one. So basically we are stubbing the to-do service mock, and then we are actually invoking the specific method, and then we are checking whether the size is matching or not. So now we would want to actually divide this into given, when, then kind of a way. Given should be everything that is doing this setup. So if I look at these lines of code, this is the one which is doing this setup. So I'm setting up the mock to return something, and when is the specific business method action. So this is also part of the setup. So I'll move this up as well. When is the specific action that needs to be done. So this is the method call which is doing the actual when, and then is this. In the given, I do the setup. In when, I would actually call the method system under test, and then I would check whether all the changes that I'm supposed to be making in that specific system under test have happened. The great thing about Mockito BDD is it even gives a specific method. So instead of using when, I can use given. So given, add a static import. Instead of using when, because I'm doing the system setup, I can use given this specific method would return to do. So it's just a change in syntax, nothing more. But you can actually express the fact that you're doing system setup. So I'm doing a given. So given this specific thing, I will return this back. So when I'm doing something as part of the given steps of the test, then I can use the given will return syntax. And so this is the given part. So in the given part, I'm doing the setup. So I do the setup in here, and I also use the given syntax. So this isn't just a syntax change. I mean, instead of when then return, I'm using given will return. The given is implemented as part of a specific package, sorry, specific class, BDD Mockito. This class is used to do all the BDD kind of a thing where you have a given will return kind of a format. So all these methods are defined in this particular class. So if you look at this, we have automatically static imported that particular thing. So we actually did a static import on BDD Mockito.given, and that's how we are using it in here. So we are using given will return. So given will return, and then we are actually doing the when and the then. The other thing about BDD Mockito is that there are a few specific methods. So I would have methods like, instead of using assert equal, I can say assert that filter to-dos dot size is 2. Let's add a static import for that. So you'd see that instead of assert equals filter to-dos 2 comma filter to-dos dot size, I can do something called assert that filter dot to-dos dot size is 2. You can see that this is much more readable. So we are saying given this particular thing, this will return a to do. When this happens, assert that filter dot to do size is 2. So this is kind of much more readable than using assert equals 2 comma filter to do dot size. So this is one of the things that you can do to make tests more readable. So use the assert that things with the core matches which are available as part of Hamcrest. So this is part of the each method is part of the Hamcrest matches. We will discuss a little bit more about the Hamcrest matches in subsequent steps. But for now, you can think of this would check if this value is the same as this value, and if it's not, this test would start failing. So basically, if you look at it, switching to BDD is not really a earth-shattering thing. It's basically a small changes in syntax which kinds of make the test more readable. So you actually split the test into 3 different parts: given, when, and then. And in given, you do the setup, and also you'd use the given kind of a syntax. So you'd use given will return. And in the when, you would actually make the actual invocation, And in the then, you would actually use readable asserts. Instead of using assert equals, you would do something like assert that, and you would actually check if the post conditions that you would want to check are all satisfied. So given our preconditions, when is the actual method call? Then you check all the post conditions. So that's basically what you would be doing in a typical BDD test. So what we'll do is we'll quickly go to the list test.java, and let's pick up a test from here. Let's say this one. Let's quickly transform this to use BDD. So if I was using BDD here, so you need to first say which is this setup part of it. So that's the given. So this is given, right? So I'm creating a mock, and when this is happening, then return that back. So that's given. And the actual system invocation is this, right? So I'm actually doing a list mock dot get 0. That's the actual uh, one, and then is the actual then are the assets. So what I'll do is given list, I'm creating a mock, and then I would use the given syntax. So given this, I'll add a static import, and I'll say given, when it's given, then it's will return. So we'll return this specific value. So given any int, so I'll take the first element and put it into a, let's declare it as list of string because it's not allowing me to typecast to that. So string first element is equal to list mock.get0, and I'll say instead of assert equals, I'll make it more readable and say assert equals, sorry, I should say assert that, and yep, the first element I'll use the is in 28 minutes. I removed the second condition, but that's okay. So let's restrict our test to the first condition alone. So you'd see now that this test would succeed. This test succeeds, and we were writing this in the given when then style. So given when then. So given a mock where everything is returning in 28 minutes, when I get the first element, I am asserting that the first element matches my expectation. So this is the way you can write tests using BDD. Like BDD is nothing, uh, I mean, as far as tests is concerned, BDD is basically a good way of organizing your tests. So you structure them in given when then, and also you'd make the specific syntax which is available for them. So in given part, you'd use the given will return, and in the then part, you'd probably use something like a hamcrest match or assert that methods. So that's about BDD. One of the exercises you can do is you can take more methods that we wrote, I mean more tests that we wrote, and you can try converting them into a BDD format. So try and put them into the given then, when then structure, making use of the appropriate, I mean syntactical sugar. So there you go. That's about BDD. Until the next step. Bye bye. There is one question we are frequently asked: what do I learn next? Our In 28 Minutes course guide has the answer to that question. Think about this for a moment. What gives most satisfaction to a course creator? Lots of money? Yeah, it does. But what else? Great reviews. Yeah, that's it. For me, the happiest moments are when I really receive great reviews. And we had 1500 such moments in the last 8 months. So that's 1500 5-star reviews in the last 8 months alone. Thank you for that. These reviews really reflect what we wanted to achieve when we started in 28 minutes. There is one question we are frequently asked: what do I learn next? Our In 28 Minutes course guide has the answer to that question. It has the details of our most popular free and paid courses. You will find a link to it in the description of the video. Let's take a quick overview of the different courses that we created for you. As Kevin says, the Java EE Made Easy course gives you the big picture. There are a lot of pieces that make up the Java EE, and this course would help you to understand how all the pieces fit together. The Spring MVC course takes you through a journey of building a web app in 25 easy steps. As Alexander says, we follow the 2080 principle and take you through a great journey with Java servlets and JSP, building a Java EE web application in 25 easy steps. Maven is the dependency management framework used in more than 80% of the projects. This course takes you through a journey with Maven with real world examples. And we have courses on C for beginners and also C puzzles for interview preparation. We have a huge list of free courses as well. Spring, Eclipse, JUnit, design patterns, Java, test-driven development, transaction management, JavaScript, Java collections, Mockito, and we are number one on YouTube for Java interview questions. Good luck with your learning. Always remember that the best way to learn is by doing. You would never learn riding a bike by just watching somebody do that. Similar to that, learning programming is all about getting your hands dirty. Keep getting your hands dirty and good luck.